Hello, scholars. This is Lesson 1.8 on Amending the Constitution. Please take good structured notes over our objectives. Today we'll talk about two different ways to propose amendments to the Constitution and two different ways to ratify those amendments to the Constitution. We'll also talk a little bit about a very important Supreme Court case called Marbury v. Madison and the concept of judicial review, and then end by talking about some of the rights that are contained in the first 10 amendments. So let's start by talking about how to amend the Constitution. There are two proposal methods and two ratifying methods, and one simple way to think about it is that they are proposed at the national level, but they're approved at the state level. So let's start by taking some notes on the proposal methods. The first is if 2/3 of state legislatures ask for a national convention. I'll say that again. If 2/3 of state legislatures ask for a national convention, so that's 38 states have to basically say, hey, we want to, formally propose this amendment. The other way to propose a constitutional amendment is if 2/3 of both houses of Congress, so 2/3 of the Senate, 2/3 of the House of Representatives, if they vote, and you do not need the signature of the president, it can be formally proposed. Now, in terms of approval, the two ways are if 3/4 of state legislatures approve the amendment, so 3/4 of the states would have to have their legislatures vote in favor, or you could have 3/4 of state conventions. So each state could have a convention, and you would need 3/4 of those state conventions to approve. Now, the little anecdote on the right kind of lets us know that the vast majority of amendments are proposed by Congress and they're approved by state legislatures. So we can change the actual words that are contained in the Constitution through the amendment process, but we can also change the meaning of what's already written there. So let's talk a little bit about the concept of judicial review. Over 200 years ago, there was a famous Supreme Court case called Marbury v. Madison, and the outcome of that case established the idea that the Supreme Court is the ultimate say on what is constitutional and what is not, and ultimately can declare acts of Congress and acts of the president unconstitutional. Please note that there is nothing in our founding documents, nothing in the U.S. Constitution that gives the Supreme Court this power. The Chief Justice at the time, a man named John Marshall, was concerned about making the judicial branch a true equal partner with the executive and legislative branches, which, if you just simply look at the wording in the Constitution, were both more powerful for sure than the court system. In addition, over time, people's interpretation of the Constitution and the words and their meaning change. A good example of this would be segregation. In the 1890s, it was considered okay to segregate as long as those facilities were separate but equal. This was considered equal protection of the law. Fast forward to the 1950s, the Supreme Court interpreted that very differently, and they said, actually, no, this isn't acceptable. And the court overturned itself with the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education decision. So as the Constitution and the debates over its ratification moved further, there were anti-federalists who were very concerned about a lack of explicit prohibitions, things that the government explicitly cannot do. And so the compromise was the anti-federalists would vote for ratification, but a specific Bill of Rights would be added to the Constitution to kind of allay some of those fears. And if you actually look at the language of the first 10 amendments, actually the first 12, they are all things that limit government power. In fact, the very first line of the very first amendment is, Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the speech or the press or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and petition the government for a redress of grievances. That was 5 different rights in one sentence. As you copy down some of these amendments, I would consider making some flashcards or something like that. Please kind of reflect on all of the things that upset colonists on the road to revolution, quartering soldiers, these general search warrants. All of those things are going to be addressed in this Bill of Rights. Now, I don't expect you to memorize all of these for sure, but if I were to ask a question about rights that are, contained in the amendments, you should be able to give me a very robust response with 4 or 5 or 6 very explicit examples. So please finish taking notes on the rights listed in the Bill of Rights and have a wonderful rest of your day.